Mr. Larry Frost. Mr. Frost, and I don't, maybe there was something that was there, but you will be allotted 5 minutes. And
a good procedural evening to you, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me?
And a good procedural evening to you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I need to sign this, do I?
I believe your name and address are already on the sheet.
I believe so. I'm going to quote you, Mr. Mayor. The bottom line is that they, Dar al-Farouk, are overburdening the site at 821 Park Avenue on an ongoing basis, and it's becoming a detriment to the community. You said that in 2013, 23 September. When Dar al-Farouk applied for its conditional use permit and its JUA, it misrepresented the size and the use intentions it had to you. It never intended to live by the occupancy and use limits it proposed, and promptly became a runaway abusive use, and you allowed it. Bloomington accepted as true data Dar al-Farouk presented and reaffirmed publicly on several occasions during their application for a conditional use permit. This council relied on Dar al-Farouk's honesty when granting a CUP to Dar al-Farouk. Their data grossly misrepresented their intentions concerning intensity of activity, attendance, hours of operation, parking, and actual uses. I'll give you an example. They had a university come in, which your old city manager said was not an allowed use. You let them do it. The conditional use permit is a legislative act and a voluntarily made contract between Dar al-Farouk and the city. The CUP tells everybody what Dar al-Farouk is able to do and when they're able to do it, because it's a conditional use in a zone that's zoned residential. Those limits should have stopped Dar al-Farouk from imposing the costs of its flagrant violation of CUP terms on its neighbors by continuous traffic, extraordinary overparking by up to 2,000 parishioners. You'll recall they said they would have about 400. Serious traffic hazards to small children in a residential neighborhood that has a lot of them, and hours of operation extending to 3 o'clock a.m. during at least 1 month a year. One of your councilmen said, I wouldn't tolerate in my neighborhood in an earlier council meeting. You are duty-bound by the oath we just heard today, Madam Council Member, to enforce the conditional use permit granted to Dar al-Farouk. But when Dar al-Farouk showed its true intentions, and almost immediately after signing the CUP began to break those terms, you decided not to enforce it. The harms to neighbors resulting from your failure include lights, noise, and traffic beyond CUP limit and street parking up to 700 cars over their allowed proof of parking limits. Dar al-Farouk has assumed almost full control of the athletic field and disproportional use of the shared city parking lot, resulting in parking routinely inaccessible to the rest of the public. This summer, I believe they have about 60 or 70% of the park usage. Parking lot spaces blocked by double parking and lane parking means that cars are unable to get out once parked, threatening the safety of park users who may have children that suffer, for example, a peanut allergy or a broken limb and have to get out of there. When complaints were filed with the city about that, you changed the rules and said double parking is legal. The city code, park rules, CUP and JOA all clearly say Smith Park is closed not later than 11 o'clock p.m. with parking up to 11:30. According to your police officers, you have privileged Dar al-Farouk worshippers above all other religions by making Smith Park a Dar al-Farouk only zone after the park is legally closed, excluding worshippers of all other faiths or citizens of no faith. The joint use agreement between Dar al-Farouk and the city took 3.5 years and 67 drafts to complete, 3 years late, and the final product requires the city to use a laborious 5-phase, 6-month enforcement process to correct any Dar al-Farouk violation, truly a non-enforcement clause. The city has to give this amazing provision to every new church applicant, and I would argue every current CUP holder can demand the same. Why? Because you are privileging Dar al-Farouk above other religions. Your old city attorney, your former city attorney, told you that you had to do that, but you made a grave legal and moral error when you signed a CUP and then didn't enforce it, because that's not what our LUPA says. Our LUPA is a statute that says you have to permit equally. You have to give churches the most favorable treatment any place of assembly receives. But once you have a CUP, you're no longer in the permitting phase. It is not a legally permitting issue anymore. They have voluntarily signed a contract with you, and you can enforce that contract and that legislative act. Despite what your previous city attorney said, you can enforce the CUP, and you must. One of your own council members said, I feel like we're punishing applicants that came after Dar al-Farouk, because you required them to do things which Dar al-Farouk was not. I think the case in point was Mount Hope Church, but it doesn't matter. The point is, applicants before and after Dar al-Farouk were limited to CUP standards. You gave Dar al-Farouk fire code maximum, which is about 4 times that. Every applicant, including the Resurrection Power Church and others who we've contacted, should have gotten the same terms. If they didn't, they're in our LUPA lawsuit. And unlike the threats that your previous attorney gave you, citing Wayzata and St. Anthony, which are not like this case at all, and I can detail it for you later if you want, the Resurrection Power Church and its other successors, like Mount Hope, really are our LUPA cases. You have unprivileged them, you have punished them, and privileged Dar al-Farouk, and that's the quintessential definition of an our LUPA lawsuit. You're exposing us to a heck of a lot of risk. Your former city attorney, Mayor Winstead, you had a moment of clarity when you said you used to get a second opinion on the absurd claim by your city attorney you couldn't enforce our laws or the CUPs. But you never followed through and got advice from a competent or LUPA law defense firm. You should have. Your instincts were right. I defy your legal department to find one case, anything like our situation with Dar al-Farouk, where a city has been legally stopped before from enforcing a voluntarily agreed to CUP because of our LUPA. I'll be glad to go head-to-head with them and come in their office, because we can't find any. I did the research. Instead of avoiding our LUPA liability, you have created it. At another point, I believe it was you, Mayor Winstead, said that it looks like, you told one of your senior planners, it looks like you're taking Dar al-Farouk, running its application through the copy machine, and making it a list of things we deny to everybody else. I think you may remember that. You're kind of nodding. That statement plus the punishing statement are prima facie proof that you're committing an our LUPA violation. It's on the record. I've submitted a petition. I am going to tell you we'd like the petition
Mr.
will
Frost,
be amended.
The 5 minutes have passed. I'd like for you to wind it up very quickly.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Dargan, I didn't see you. Well, we're submitting the petition to you immediately, but what we will not do is we reserve leave to amend it because the data request we asked for last month has not been delivered to us. The city clerk tells us that she had 9 ahead of us, and it was a very busy month. So when we get the data request we asked, we will complete the proofs and submit them to you separately.
Thank you for your comments. Matilda Zumba? Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to translate. Excuse me, Matilda, let me get this down.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Matilde Zumba.
Good afternoon. My name is Matilda Zumba.
Vivo en la 614 East 82 Street en Bloomington.
She lives in the neighborhood by Dar al-Farouk.
Tengo 2 niños pequeños que ellos siempre están jugando fuera.
I have 2 small children that are always playing outside.
Tengo mucho miedo porque a veces hay mucho tráfico. La gente de esa comunidad no respetan a veces a los niños que caminan por la calle.
I'm very afraid because there's a lot of traffic and a lot of speeding, and the people of the Dar al-Farouk community don't respect our speed limits and our safety of our children.
También tenemos miedo de llevar a los niños al parque porque hay niños que no respetan a los demás niños en los juegos.
I'm also now afraid to take our children to the park because there are many children there who don't respect the rights of our own children to play there.
Y a los niños muchas veces son resabiados, les gusta a veces no compartir los juegos que tienen ahí y los padres de ellos no hacen nada, a veces nomás gritan pero no hacen nada con los niños.
A lot of times the other children don't want to work together or share with our children. Sometimes their parents are there and they may shout at them, but they don't do anything and just let their kids continue to interfere.
El parque era para todos ahí muchas veces bien seguro, pero últimamente ya no es y ya no llevamos a nuestros hijos ahí. Hay mucha comunidad hispana que iban ahí, pero yo creo que ya no veo muchas veces ahí.
I'm going to have to summarize. My memory isn't that long, but this park was very important to the Spanish community especially, and we met there a lot. But now we don't because it just don't feel like taking our children there.
Y sí, eso es como ser que la comunidad de ese lugar que ahora llegó ahí no nos gusta porque es como que no nos sentimos seguros.
And now the community doesn't like to go there because we don't feel safe.
Ya, y eso es todo como ser para nosotros los hispanos es muy importante un parque seguro como lo que teníamos antes, pero ahora ya no es así.
For we Hispanics, it's very important to have a park that's the center of our community, but now we don't go there. We don't have a center for our community anymore because we don't feel it's safe to be there.
Nada más. Muchas gracias.
Nothing else, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments. There's a couple minutes left to the public comment period. Was there anyone else who wanted to address the council on any items not on tonight's agenda?
I'd like to address the council on this agenda that I think you've kind of ignored, an important agenda item. Thank you very much.
Could you state your name for the...
Longtime Bloomington resident.
Anger Hoffer.